good evening, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Bhakti Community. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today, Bhakti On, where we will discuss spiritual appetite. What you feed grows, nourish the soul, and the heart wakes up. With our speaker today, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and a former monk. We were around 13 members on Zoom, and people are still dialing in. But thank you so much, Vaish, for coming back for another episode of Bhakti On.
Thank you so much, JM, for such a warm welcome. And great to see you all here today. And a favorite topic of mine, because it has to do with eating. It's a metaphor. And it's a good guide for us in spiritual practice because it's visceral, something we can judge for ourselves. Spiritual appetite. In fact, I'm going to look the word up and see what we're talking about. Appetite means a natural desire to satisfy bodily need, especially for food, a strong desire or liking for something. It comes from Old French and Latin, a desire for appetitus, from appetere, to seek after, add to, and petere, to seek. So somehow, and I'm not going to pull out my Oxford English Dictionary to look up the history right now because I'll have to get my magnifying glass out to read it. In any case, we know what an appetite is, right? How do you know? How do you know when you're hungry? JM, you're smiling. How do you know when you're hungry?
Um, your stomach hurts, and it gives you a signal. That I need to eat something to satisfy it.
It's very direct, isn't it? Nobody has to give you a certificate. You don't have to fly anybody in. You don't have to go online and check. You have a direct experience that you have this feeling that you're hungry. Of course, sometimes we're faked out. We're actually thirsty, but we think we're hungry, so we eat instead of quenching our thirst. But the fact is that as hunger grows, we become more aware of it. There are certain symptoms. And today's subject matter has to do with the practicality of spiritual practice and advancement. That sounded a little bit redundant because practical and practice were right next to each other, but it's something in the spiritual wisdom literature called Bhagavad Gita that is announced as the way that we can understand spiritual advancement, seeing that that's the object of the book Bhagavad Gita is to show us how to advance spiritually. And in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the teacher, Krishna, informs his student that you should be able to experience it directly. And you should know for yourself. It's not theoretical, in other words. There is some theory involved, but he says in the Gita that you should see it for yourself. You should feel it for yourself. And this metaphor upon which I've drawn today to give this presentation shows up in a book called the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavad Gita gives categorical knowledge about spiritual practice. And the Srimad Bhagavatam continues the same conversation, only it gives a more granular view of what it feels like to contend with the material world and also to make spiritual advancement even while living in it. And the metaphor given, well, first, let me go back to the Bhagavad Gita for a second. And I know I'm just charging right in today, but don't worry, I'll stop and ask for your feedback in just a minute. Not that you look that worried, but I just didn't want you to panic. Though there is a section in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which I find very helpful. You see this conversation, which ends up to be a dialogue of 700 verses that inform us of the foundational practices for spiritual life. It's non-sectarian. It has to do with our foundational nature and the categories of energy of this world, the difference between us and the energy of the material world, which is called the material world. And we're categorically different from that energy. That's why we feel that it's non-cooperative, because it's very clunky compared to us. What's more, it's always falling apart, and we never do. And in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the student very helpfully asking questions to Krishna, of which we're privy to. As he's asking questions, we're hearing the answer. It's kind of nice. You're just there listening in, and you can read it again and again to hear the answers. And oftentimes Arjuna asks a question. It's like, good, I wanted to know that. I'm glad he asked that question. And in one of the sections of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks his teacher, Krishna, what are the symptoms of someone who is spiritually advanced or is progressing on the spiritual path? I find that to be a very helpful question. What do all of you think? For instance, have you ever had an ailment? Has anybody here ever had an ailment? Let's do a survey. JM, you've had an ailment? I don't believe it. You always look so healthy. And um, yeah, if you go to somebody, a health expert, and you say, I feel like this, um, I won't go into the symptoms, but then the person is able to diagnose it and say, I know exactly what that is. And here's the medicinal dose you should take to get rid of it. It's heartening, isn't it? Because then you know there's a solution. There's something you can do about it. And as far as our existential situation in this world, I mean, Krishna talks about it in the Bhagavad Gita. He talks about birth, death, old age, and disease, not something that comes up regularly at Thanksgiving dinner or something like that. People generally talk about movies or some other thing that's lighthearted. If someone says, what do you want to talk about? You say, birth, death, old age, and disease. It's like, who invited this guy? But in the Gita, Krishna confronts what's really bothering us, which is we feel incompatible in a world that's always changing, and we feel threatened by non-existence. That's a horrible feeling. So he describes ways in which we can rectify our existential angst and our feelings of frustration and the oppression we feel in this world, that we're almost as if swimming in an ocean that keeps pulling us under. There's a phrase for that in the Bengali language. So many spiritual teachings come out of Bengal, and it's a onomatopoeia, which means the word sounds exactly like the event that's happening. And in one of his poems, Bhaktivinoda Thakur uses the word that sounds like you're drowning. Habudubu. If you say habudubu a few times, it sounds like bubbles coming up from the water. And it literally, when you're getting dunked and bubbles are coming up and you're trying to get some air, if you say it a few times, habudubu, 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 you sound blah, 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 blah. So he said, what's going on with you? You're drowning. That's your problem. How do you get out of it? And in the Gita, so helpfully, Arjuna, the student, asked Krishna, so what's a symptom of somebody who's making spiritual advancement? We'd like to know that. We've heard about some of the cures, but how do you know that you're recovering? Can you see it for yourself? And in that dialogue, Krishna answers. One of the first things he talks about is how we're able to notice urges that naturally flow into our, I'll say what a friend of mine always says, into our mental system. I just say we're subjected to urges. If you've ever tried on an Apple Watch or any, I don't know, there are other watches too that do this. I wore one for a while, and I'm not saying anything bad against Apple Watches in case anybody from Apple is on here or listening. It's just that every few minutes I feel my wrist buzz and I think, oh no, what happened now? And constantly getting this stimuli, these coming to my arm. And it reminded me of the urges that always come up. All the senses have some urge. It's like, take me here, do this, look at that. And so these are manufactured by the mind. This is the way Krishna describes it in the Bhagavad Gita. And he says, when you're making spiritual advancement, you'll start to notice that these urges are superfluous to you as the inhabitor of the body, and you can witness them without reacting to them immediately. So I can be carried away by them and be drowned in a series of, or I should say, keep the metaphor straight, in a stream or a pool, even better, of these urges. I'm pulled down into it. And in the Gita, in the answer to Arjuna's question, what does it feel like? What does a person who is advancing spiritually feel? And he says, I'll say a few of the Sanskrit words. Prajahati. Prajahati means the person is able to withdraw. And later on in this section, Krishna gives the metaphor of a tortoise. If you ever played with a tortoise or pet a tortoise or talked to a tortoise or encountered one somewhere, and you'll notice that it can pull its limbs within the shell. That's its defense system. And so Krishna says that the tortoise, just as a tortoise can draw its limbs within the shell in the time of danger, a self-realized person has the wherewithal to pull the senses back when these urges come. And so this prajahati, you can compare it to the turtle pulling its limbs within the shell, withdrawing from the sense object. And kaman means material desire. So he says, prajahati yada kaman sarva partha manogatan. And he says something interesting about our minds. And tell me if you've ever experienced this. If you witness your mind, it could be something like a ceiling fan. It's just going around and around and around. But manogata, gata means it's going. And he just makes a simple statement in this language that the mind goes and it goes and it goes. Even you fall asleep at night. Have you ever been woken up by your mind? You're sleeping happily and all of a sudden, well, I think I forgot to email my mom for her birthday. Whatever it may be, the mind is going even while you're sleeping. And so he says, Sarvamparta, that you can notice the mind going and prajahati and not feel obligated to engage in chasing it or be overwrought by these stimuli that come from your mind. So the verse goes like that. Prajahati adhakaman sarvan partha manogatan. This was the first symptom of somebody who's making spiritual advancement. We can feel that, right? If you practice bhakti, you'll notice that you develop the wherewithal to be aloof from impulses that come into your mind and say, do this, do that. It's like, why? Don't listen to everything your mind tells you. You have another life beyond the mind. And then he says, Atman yevatmana tushta. Tushta is a nice word. Try saying it. It feels good. Tushta. I have a friend named Tushta. I like saying his name. Hey, Tushta. Because tushta means satisfaction. It kind of sounds like that too. Tushta. And tushta. Atman yevatmana tushta means a symptom of spiritual advancement is it feels satisfied in yourself. It's not that you have to pursue the next desire that comes off the conveyor belt of your mind. It's as if it's constantly producing something. Say, no, you have to have this, you have to have that, you have to go there, you have to go here. Somebody who's tushta or satisfied really doesn't have to go anywhere because he or she feels, okay, I'm fine right where I am. I feel satisfied in myself. Stita pragnastadocide. Then he gives this final statement in the verse saying, this is what it feels like to be on solid ground and not being pushed constantly to do something else, go somewhere else. You don't have to become someone else because you realize that you already are something so significant. I mean, I was thinking about it like this the other day that imagine if somebody gave you the gift of a flashlight that didn't require batteries and it always works. You didn't have to charge it anywhere. They give it to you and they say it's always worked. It's been passed down in my family for 5 generations and it's always worked. It's never been charged. You'll never have to charge it and it'll work forever. It just always works. The self is like that. In comparison to everything we know in this world that's always powering down and you always have to recharge it or replace it, that's remarkable. And if you think about your own self, Atman Yevatmana Tushta, you start to feel satisfied. It's like, I really don't need anything in this world because it's beneath me. All these things, they really like, and no thanks. I'm good up here. You guys go about your business and do what you have to do down there in this world. Sherelle, please go ahead.
Sorry, my mind's like telling me I have to share this. I'm being controlled by my
Please,
mind at the
please.
moment. During COVID times, when people were like stood down from their work and things like that if they weren't getting the vaccine, and there was lots of freedom rallies I was attending, and someone was asking someone else. I just overheard this conversation, like, "Oh, are you still able to work?" He goes, "Oh, I stopped working because I realized I already work." Like what you were saying, we work. It's just like the concept of work. Yeah, not that I'm like for like not being in the world and giving service, but I just when he said that, I just had to laugh because it's like, yeah, we wake up and we work, like our body's working. It already does. He's like, yeah, I already do work. Like it was just, yeah, it was a funny moment.
Yeah, you may
Worth
be
sharing.
aware of the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is about work. And in that section of the Gita, work yoga, he calls it, karma yoga. Krishna talks about how a person who's in this state of self-realization has no obligation to work, doesn't feel an obligation to work. He said, but all of us have to work to maintain ourselves to some degree, but we're not pushed. We do maintenance so that we keep the body and soul together for spiritual practice.
Yeah,
And
it's not to prove that we're worthwhile of being and that
yeah,
yeah,
and that's
yeah, it's
another way in which we're impelled to work. And one who's satisfied doesn't have to wear a mask, prove him or
not.
herself in any way. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Sherelle.
You're
Denise had
welcome.
her hands up too.
Oh, good. Who else has their hand up?
Denise.
Oh, Denise,
I
please go ahead.
did. Oh,
Denise
okay.
didn't have her hand up.
Hare Krishna, though.
She's back from Hawaii, and that's a good thing to
Yeah,
have you back.
yeah. My son got married in Hawaii, so we had a wedding.
Congratulations.
Yeah, yeah. It was really nice.
Which island?
It was, you know what? He got married at the Disney Hotel on Oahu. So
Yeah.
it was very Disney. It was really fun. Lots of things for the Indriya, lots of things for the senses. To
Yeah.
withdraw from the senses. Oh my goodness. It was so loud.
Well, really, it's loud at Disneyland. I didn't know that.
Oh,
Plus, I
well,
didn't even know there was a Disneyland in Hawaii.
oh, actually, it's just a hotel.
Oh, I see.
But the people are
Okay.
so happy. They're extremely loud,
Well, at
screaming and
least,
yelling the whole time about all their joy.
is the mouse there?
Oh, Mickey Mouse was there, Minnie
All
Mouse,
right.
Donald
Then
Duck,
it's bona fide.
Goofy. But the nicest thing was they had I'll just take one off the lamp here. They had kukui malas. They're made out of kukui nuts,
Wow.
and everybody wears them. And they're very beautiful. They're just,
So are you suggesting we could also chant on those? Is that what
I
you're
was
saying?
wondering, so I was gonna count them while we were in class and tell you how many there are. There's not 108.
Yeah, well, you finished 16 rounds faster.
Yeah, oh hey. There we go.
You're doing kukui rounds now.
Well,
Well,
But
welcome back, Denise. Great to have you back here.
there was one thing I was thinking about though, because everybody wears a watch and they're all plugged into, so you brought up your watch and your Apple Watch. Everybody's plugged into all the devices right now. And so, and then I have mine all switched off so they don't talk to me. But in the morning, I get up and I check my heart rate variability to see if it's good. How much do I need to exercise? Do I need to improve and everything? And it has to do with the census, because in Silicon Valley, it's or everybody I know, we're so plugged into the keeping healthy and plugging into all the things that increase your senses. So anyway, you brought up your watch and it really made me think, do I need to wear a watch?
Yeah, a lot of people don't. I don't wear an Apple Watch now. It's not anything against Apple Watch. I have one on my desk here, but it was annoying me. And also, I knew that, anyway, everybody knew that I would be getting immediate messages, so why wasn't I answering them right back?
Yeah.
Napoleon used to take 3 months to answer his mail. And he said it was very efficient for him, he said, because 90% of it was already resolved before he answered it. That's not necessarily my philosophy, but I'm just telling that.
There's something in that though. Like when you give anything space, it's like, oh, I have to do this. 2 days later, oh, I don't have to do that anymore because it sorted itself out.
Yeah, well,
And
oftentimes things
it's
seem
like
like
with your
such an
health, like how
emergency.
much do you need to know? Like how much do you really need to know?
Yeah, that's true. And, there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita in which Krishna talks about this inversion, that a self-realized person is awake, and he compares the person who's in ignorance. For that person, the time of awakening is a time of sleep for the self-realized, and vice versa. I had an experience once in Los Angeles where I was visiting an ashram daily, and the first program starts at 4:30 a.m. And I was walking there on a Sunday morning, just a few blocks, but then I saw some revelers coming back from their revelment somewhere in a SUV driving down the street playing music. And we had this moment while they were passing me. They were looking at me and I was looking at them. I was thinking, what are you doing out at this time? And they were thought, what are you doing out at this time of the day? And we had completely different lifestyles. So it's kind of an inversion. Okay, JM, I better get to some slides, but Nina has a point.
Yes, Nina, just want to share that when we were in Hawaii, I got myself a bead necklace made out of coconut shell, and I was amused to count 108 small beads. I still have it, and I wear it sometimes.
That's remarkable. I wonder if they actually counted them and did that on purpose, or if you're just one of the luckiest persons in the world. Actually, shells used to be a form of currency in some older cultures. So you have 108 of something you can trade in at some point. Okay, here's where this metaphor is going. And this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. There is a verse that I gravitate towards, and it comes from a teaching of a group of 9 sages. These 9 sages had nothing else to do except for to travel together and enlighten whomever they met. And they happened upon a king named Nimi. And Nimi was engaged in the world, as many kings are, but he had a very good heart. So when these 9 sages, who were all brothers, showed up at the gathering the king had organized, everybody stood up to show them respect, including the king, because they realized that these sages had something important to teach. And each one of the sages answered a question that Maharaj Nimi asked them, successively, 9 questions altogether. And so this king, Nimi, he asked about the entanglement in the material world. How is it that a perfectly conscious being becomes dragged into the illusion of the material world? And he answers about how we misuse of minute independence, and how we get absorbed in the material nature and we feel afraid because we think we have something to lose. And then when he talks about spiritual practice, he gives this metaphor about eating. How many of you here are aware of when you get hungry? Probably all of us, right? We know when we're hungry. But how do we know? We just know. It's intrinsic. We feel it directly. And how do we know when we're full? Have you ever been very, very hungry and you get an excellent meal, and then although there's more, the host has more to give you, you say no mas? Have you ever said no mas? I can't take any more? Uttara Devi, has that ever happened to you? You said no more, I don't want any more, even though it was the best food you've ever eaten? Yes?
Yes, yes.
How did you know? How did you know you didn't want any more? How did you know?
It just satisfies.
Yeah, and I like the word just. It's just, you know, directly. So this is part of the beauty of this book, the Srimad Bhagavatam. It gives very understandable examples, practical, lived examples. And so what it says is, what the sage was telling the king is the practice, spiritual practice, bhakti yoga, it's like eating. He says it's like eating. When you're very hungry and you eat, you get satisfaction, he said, nourishment, and eradication of hunger. These 3 things happen simultaneously. With every bite, you diminish your hunger. That shakiness you might have felt if you're very, very hungry, eagerness to eat. So you start to feel full. But there's more to it. And every metaphor may have some variation when it comes to the application of it, especially in bhakti. And so what the sage then went on to say is that a little goes a long way in the practice of bhakti. Now, what this is a comment given by a very famous practitioner of bhakti who lived hundreds of years ago and gave commentary to these verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he talked about how any little bit we do in our spiritual practice gives us a sense of accomplishment, and it's never lost. That's also in the Bhagavad Gita. But the deeper you practice, the more you feel transformation in your life. So, formula, a little bhakti practice leads to a little experience and a little detachment. Full bhakti practice, or the fuller you make it in your life, the fuller your experience, and you may get complete detachment. Now, let me explain what detachment means here. Because sometimes there's this idea that spiritual life means giving up everything and walking away from the world. But surprisingly, in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that Arjuna, who was a warrior, wanted to walk away from his duty of fighting in this war. It was a dharmic war. And Krishna told him, no, you have to fight, but do it for the highest reason, do it in service. And so we don't negate anything of the world, nor do we negate work, which may be used in service. And so, what is that detachment? Detachment doesn't mean we have to give up all our possessions or movement in general, but it means that our way of engaging things in the world changes. We see all paraphernalia that we have or anything that's in the world as engageable in service to the Supreme. And so, as one practices bhakti, and this is the comparison to eating, when you eat and you get full, somebody may say, "Here, take a little more," and you say, "No, thank you, I'm already full." And in a similar way, when you're full in your heart in bhakti, when you feel satisfied, that atmatushta I was talking about, then you're detached from trying to hold on to things in the world and use them for yourself. You're more and more eager to engage them for a higher purpose. And so it sounds like the most simple formula, doesn't it? That a little goes a long way, but more is more. So, what are the implications here? That you can continue expanding your bhakti practice and that feeling of satisfaction will increase. Now, here's where the metaphor diverges from the experience one has in bhakti. Because when you're eating, there's a satiation point, isn't there, Tathagat? Don't you get to a point where you say, I can't eat anymore?
Yes.
So there's a way in which, in bhakti, although you feel satisfied, you still want more. That'd be nice if you're able to eat unlimitedly and never get completely full nor gain weight, if you were trying to gain weight or not trying to not gain weight. So he says the appetite, as you increase your spiritual practice, your appetite grows without limit. So that's where the metaphor diverges. And when you're eating, you can't eat continuously, but in bhakti, you can increase the practice without limitation. So don't worry, you won't get full. There was a little comic strip. It wasn't a strip, it was individual jokes that called The Far Side. I think the Gary Larson retired, but there was one of them with a student in a class, and he walked up. He was walking up to the teacher, and he was saying, "My brain's full. I can't take any more in." So that doesn't happen in bhakti. You can continue uh, taking more and more and more, and the result will be more. It's kind of like a dream come true, because if you've ever had that thing where I wish I could eat unlimitedly and I feel the satisfaction of eating, but I never got full and I never gained weight. That sounds pretty good. So bhakti's like that. No ceiling for your advancement in bhakti. And that I'm going to just see if there's any reflections, because I see some things on the board.
Yeah.
And
Mayura
let's take
just
reflections
asked,
or questions.
yeah, I think question comment. Mayura asked, is there a relationship between being spiritually full and physical hunger? If it is inversely proportional, could it be the next weight loss platform, Bhakti for a slimmer you? Goodbye, GLP.
What's GLP?
Mayura?
It's the biggest weight loss uh, drug that people use nowadays.
Oh, yeah. Well, um, one thing I've noticed, there are some opportunities in the practice of bhakti to pause eating for some time. And what I've noticed is, like, one of the days is a special day called Janmashtami. And it's such a festive day that those who are practicing bhakti have services to do all day long. And the main ceremony occurs at midnight. So most of those who celebrate this, and it's a hugely popular ceremony, it's Krishna's birthday, they generally fast all day long and don't take anything until midnight. But most people don't feel hungry because they're satisfied with the service and the engagement. You barely notice it. Anyone? Anyone? So yeah, there is a relationship between being spiritually full. One thing is, oftentimes we're only reacting to the stimuli that are coming from our stomach, our body, and thinking we're hungry. Radha.
Now, I just thought to share actually related to the same subject. Uh, in one of the festival days, when the first time I thought I should try the fasting on the Janmashtami day, around, I think in the afternoon, it was very, I was started feeling I should eat something. But then somehow or other, there was, type of service I was engaged in, it was become really intense. And then for next 6 hours, I found myself without hunger, without thirst. It was almost like 11 o'clock suddenly. So I just felt like it is all the limitation which minds provides us is all within our mind itself. The moment you're engaged, you forget completely that you can be without and you can serve. So that one experience completely changed my outlook. That all the limitation which I was carrying in my head only, but I can fast on that day as well and while doing the service.
Yeah, and it stands to reason, doesn't it? Because in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a long verse where Krishna describes a person who's experiencing a spiritual stimulation. And he starts off by saying, Naiva kinchit koromiti yukto manyeta tatvavit pashyan shrinban srisanjigran ashnan gachan swapan Pralapan Vishrayan Grinnan Unmishan Nimishan Napi Indriyan Indriyateshu Vartanta Itidaran. And all that means is that a person who's experiencing this inner happiness notices all of the goings on of the body. After all, it's constantly cycling. And how many organs are in the body? If anybody studied physiology, it's staggering how many different organs are there. And they're all performing their functions. So what the verse says is when somebody's experiencing this inner happiness from bhakti, satisfaction, he or she is noticing that the body is going on and doing its, performing its functions. I like to compare it to a washing machine. Let's say a dishwasher. Does anybody have a dishwasher besides themselves doing it manually? If you have a dishwasher, you put in everything, Phil washes by himself. We put in and it goes through cycles. Or a washing machine, any machine that does something automatically. The body's like that as well. It goes through cycles. And a person who has this revelation that I'm separate from the body, is experiencing the happiness of the self, notices that these things are going on, but barely notices it. They're superfluous to the person who's self-realized. Although the practitioner does take care of the body and doesn't neglect it because it's a vehicle for self-realization, but is very much aware that these things are just mechanical, they're going on. And that's a real experience. What else, JM?
Yeah, I just want to take a moment and welcome anyone who might have joined here for the first time, or you came back after a long time. Would love to welcome you back. Or if you brought in your friend, please feel free to introduce them. Would like to say hi to them. Anyone here for the first time or joining after a break?
Very Krishna. I'm joining after a long time, so very happy to be here.
Thanks for being here, Nitya.
Thank you, Nitya. Ishwari, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for this opportunity to tune in. It's like new realizations come when you speak. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ishwari Radha, for being here and for your remark.
Yeah, I too joining. Like, I'm joining after a long time. So thank you for the opportunity.
I
Bhakti.
thought so. Good to see you back. What's happening? This must be a special day of some kind. It's great. Well, it's nice that we have this opportunity that JM makes for us so that we always have a place to go and to keep the vibration going. It's one of the main techniques for advancing in anything. Oh, Rocky.
Oh, hi. I'm joining after a long time too. Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah, glad to be back because these classes really helped me, and I really feel that I need the help again. So I'm glad to be here. And also, I would like to share something about fasting. Like when we do this once a month Ekadashi without water, I always think, how do I do it? But because I can't control hunger for a long time, I look, let me try how much the Supreme helped me. Then it goes on and on and on. And in the evening, I'm full of energy. So every single time I'm able to do it. But every time it starts, again, it's not my ability. I feel the fasting and the help from up above helps us do that.
Yeah, that's known as tapasya. Tapasya really means, tapa means heat. And there's a way in which when we delay sense gratification, we cross over a barrier because the senses are designed in such a way to say, attend to me or you'll die. But when we don't attend to them right away, there's a way in which we notice that not only didn't I die, just like Rocky said, I felt more energy. And it's one of the ways in which controlling the senses, regulating the senses, sometimes doing tapasya, delaying sense gratification, can be very helpful in becoming more sober and not just giving into the senses all the time. In fact, it's one of the points that Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita is by regulating the senses, then you can become more aware that you're not your body. There's a metaphor also about that in the Srimad Bhagavatam about taming a horse. And when you're developing a relationship with a horse, which can be a symbiotic and very pleasant relationship between a horse and a human, sometimes when you're learning to ride the horse and the horse is learning to accommodate the rider, you can't just pull back on the reins all the time. You have to know how to let the reins out and then pull them back at the right time. And in a similar way, it's mentioned there that we should regulate the senses and not be overly austere to the point where the senses come bouncing back and say, okay, now you owe me 10 times as much because you starved me. But the beautiful aspect of this verse we're talking about today in Bhakti is that the restraint of the senses is not so much the point. It's that when we have a superior engagement, like when we do fasting, we're doing something else that's more pleasant and more pleasing. And this is called param drishva nivartate. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, there is a point in which you're aware, oh, I'm controlling my senses. But then when you cross that boundary and you're feeling a superior happiness, the atmatushta, then you think, oh, I'm not even interested in those other things. Okay, Jam, there's more. This is like planes lining up at O'Hare Airport.
Vicky, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you. Sorry for being camera off. My computer is just overheating. I wanted to note Van has been here pretty consistently, but I don't know if we had a chance to just kind of hear from her. She's been attending the mantra meditation sessions on Wednesday pretty consistently with Premanishta, and that reminded me of the topic of spiritual appetite as hers is growing. So Van, it's really great to have you here and would love to hear from you if you have an opportunity.
Well, thank hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Van, we can hear you. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for noticing me. The funny thing is like I'm also like on diet. The funny is the topic today we're talking about like satisfied about eating. Um, I don't know. I just feel really just say it's serene when I feel tired, and when I chose the meditation, so all my tiredness and anxiety just gone. And I'm just listening to people. I mean, the conversation. Um, yeah, I think that's all. But thank you for notifying me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Van. Great to have you here. And I'm glad you mentioned hearing the conversation, because in Bhakti, it's the first and most important process is just to hear. And it's called Shravanam. The ears are so powerful, and the process of hearing is transformative. And so those who are interested in advancing in Bhakti, they arrange to be in situations where they can hear more and more. Okay, look, JM, we have Ishwari Radha.
Yeah, please go ahead, Ishwari Radha.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I want to share this with you since you brought up this fasting, that it's not on fasting days, it's not just about you focusing on fasting, but rather you're thinking, oh, what service can I do? When you're engaged in service, you completely forget that you're fasting, because there's one thing after the other. Is either you're serving your family, you're serving the deities, you're serving. And I realize myself, every time Ekadasi comes, I'm like, oh, I have to do this. I want to get the flowers. I want to get the garland. I want to get this. I have to get the food ready for everybody else. And like nonstop from morning till night. And I don't feel tired at all. And I'm like, wow, how is that happening, Krishna? This is amazing.
Yeah, it's a higher taste. And also, it's surprising too, because normally I'm so aware of every stimuli that comes from my body, and I have to attend to it. But when we have somewhere better to be, in fact, that's one of my definitions of renunciation, is you have somewhere better to be. And it takes a lot of energy to eat and digest and eliminate. It takes a lot of our time. You notice that also. This isn't a show about fasting, by the way, but I'm just saying, when there is some opportunity and we take it, you may notice that you have a lot more time and you have a lot more energy. And again, it's not about just cutting off eating. There are certain strategic times for fasting that allow us to do more service and contemplation, and also have this realization of our relationship with our bodies, and see that the body's going on. And I take it for granted. I think I am my body and I have to attend to every single need the body has. But when we regulate and we do some very slight austerity, we can get some realization from it. Right, JM?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how to increase your spiritual appetite. It's in medical science. It's known if you have a good appetite, you're quite healthy. And there's a way in which you can increase your spiritual appetite. Neha, good to see you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yeah, this is my first time in this session here, and I really like today's topic and the discussion that you're doing. And talking about fasting, I never did any fasting until I joined ISKCON before. And after doing Ekadashi and got inspired by other devotees around, I did Ekadashi, and then I felt more energetic and more rejuvenated and more positive on that day. And after reading Srimad Bhagavatam, I realized that moon is also the expansion of Shri Krishna. So I started doing new moon and full moon fasting also. And I could do that without any problem. So I just feel like when you devote your intention towards something spiritual, and have that concept in your mind, I think you can carry out that. But that's what I never thought in my past before joining ISKCON and before the Devotees Association. Just wanted to share that since we all are talking about fasting.
Yeah, it's a profound realization that we have another side to us that can be uncovered through spiritual practice. And yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, and also another reason is also there is like one of the scientists who received the Nobel Prize for discovering that fasting helps and that causes the autophagy, which cleans your body itself. And that's another reason I thought, wow, there is a scientific evidence to that. So that's also made me think that I should do the fasting, and not just a spiritual aspect to it, but also there is a scientific evidence that our body is very much affected by the moon and its position. And on the 11th day, that is Ekadashi, the moon's position is such a way that it affects our digestion, and not eating that day or eating little less helps with our digestion also. So after all those realization, I felt and I can witness that.
Absolutely. There's a science behind it too.
Right.
Yeah. It's a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
Thanks, Neha. And happy fasting.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Well, this is an interesting slide about how to increase spiritual appetite. This is one of the main teachings of Bhakti, is that we take on the qualities of those with whom we associate. And if you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room. Try to be in the room, and it's not about being smart. Try to find people who have a deeper, more intense spiritual appetite than you do and associate with them, because by that association, you'll take on that quality as well. That's one of the main principles of bhakti, is just by association. And by the same token, if you associate with people who are cynical or who have a sense of engaging in the world wantonly without any consideration of the results in their life, consciousness, etc., then we will pick up those same qualities. And so in the metaphor of eating and hunger and how it's healthy to be hungry, there's this way in which, by associating with those who already have a spiritual appetite, we also begin to feel similarly. And consistent practice, this idea of consistency, is very helpful in the sense that we may have aspirations but not feel we have the wherewithal to achieve them. So what to do? Start with what you have right now, whatever appetite you have now, and whatever interest you have in bhakti, take it up to that degree, because it'll grow from there. And I already mentioned this in a couple of sessions ago about one of my music teachers told me, what I want to see each time we meet is that you're better than before. If you try to make incremental improvements, tiny, tiny little improvements if necessary, then you'll feel satisfied that you're moving forward. Association, again, is the key to taking on the kind of developing a determination. And finally, it's not about ending hunger, spiritual hunger. There is some concept that spiritual life means stillness, no more interest in anything. You become a non-entity. This is a fallacious idea. We are persons, and we have creativity. We want beauty, we want love, but we're reposing our love in places that it will remain unrequited. And yoga means a realignment of our desires, of our love, and offering our services So we have to serve. So in bhakti, we develop our hunger, so to speak, for serving the Supreme. Supreme, the origin of everything, is mentioned in the ancient Vedas. Janmadhyasya yataha. There's a personal source that everything comes from, and that's delightful, because everything that we relish in this world is connected to personality. And so the tastiness of bhakti is that we can increase our desire for creativity, for service, for love unlimitedly. It can continue to grow. And the key is to direct it towards our source, of which we're a part. And that's the name for that source is Krishna, the personal origin of everything. So here are a few positive takeaways. Seek advanced association. Try to be with those who are more advanced than yourself. Try deepening your practice a little bit at a time. If you're doing some practice in bhakti, find out a way to pay more attention to what you're doing. That's usually the best place to start, is because it's possible to be practicing something and not even aware that you're practicing it. So try starting with whatever you're doing on a regular basis. Be more aware of what you're doing. Be more attentive to the practice and what it means. Study it carefully. And a little bit goes a long way. Do some service. Service is the key. In Sanskrit, it's called seva. And a friend of mine had this mantra. He used to say, your seva will save you. Because as soon as we engage in service, selfless service, we naturally feel satisfied. And also, trust the compounded effect. Little drops a day, my teacher used to say, wear the stone away. You can see that in nature. And if we do our level best, even if we think it's tiny and we're consistent, it will compound. And there will come a time when we feel quantum leaps in our practice. So think of what's your one thing today. Write down, what could I do tomorrow to make an increase? And embrace the process. Be in the process, and you'll find that it's very satisfying. And it's, going back to the metaphor, just like eating. When you're hungry and you eat, you'll feel satisfaction. You'll feel eradication of hunger. And you'll feel nourishment as well. And going back to the second slide earlier, it was said by a famous commentator on this verse, if you do a little bhakti, you'll feel a little satisfaction. If you do more, you'll feel more satisfaction. And then some people get greedy and they say, what if I do a whole bunch of bhakti? How will that work? Well, it's not that you'll get so full and you'll feel sick. Quite the contrary. You'll feel more and more satisfied. So people who are making advancement in the practice of bhakti think then, well, why shouldn't I try to increase it as much as possible? And that's not a bad idea. Only we can do what we can do at the time. And so we should take full advantage of the hunger we have now and try to incrementally increase it over time. And we'll never be disappointed. Ijo desu, as they say in Japan, the end. And now if you have a question or a reflection you want to share, we still have 60 seconds, which is a lot. You can do a lot in 60 seconds. I can do some background music. Namachintamani, please tell us.
Thank you so much for this session. I love the analogy of the tortoise. It's always really easy to relate to. I had the question following the topic of eating in Bhakti. Is there the concept of biting off more than you can chew? Like I've heard sometimes mentors or teachers might say, okay, pace yourself, go slow because you have to go a long way. Could you say something?
There is to some degree. I can refer you to the Bhagavatam in the 11th canto. There's the term adhikari. And Krishna gives this teaching, Swe Swe Adhikari Anishta, that do what you can handle. And it's in the context of you're pretending to be more advanced than you actually are. He said it's not helpful. In a communal situation, well, let's just say in a yoga class, doesn't the teacher usually say, don't try to imitate others? Just do what you can do with the asana. And in a similar way, we needn't put on a mask and pretend that we're more advanced than we are. It's not helpful. In fact, it's called a dosha or a fault. And a guna means a good quality. So it's a good quality if you know your level. And pursuant to that, or I should say, in explaining that phenomena or that way of thinking, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is another great commentator. Speaking on that says, it's like climbing a ladder. If you try to run up too fast, you could slip and fall. But if you put your foot on a rung and you find that it's steady, then you can take the next step and the next step. So he says, once your foot is steady on the rung, don't hesitate to go to the next step. He says, also don't run up the ladder. Take a steady approach, and when you see the opportunity, move and keep going. It's a commonsensical, right? It's very helpful. So we have to do what we can do with what we have now and not get discouraged that we can't do everything. And we should also know that everyone can rise in due course of time. Nobody is outside the realm of advancement who's sincere and tries to make advancement. Some people may seem to grow faster, and then other people may seem to go slower, but the fruit always comes for those who are consistent in the practice over time. JM, where did the time go? Are we really to the end? 2 minutes over. Thank you. It was a session where we saw a lot of new faces or those who were coming back. That was heartening. And there was some nice engagement, good questions. The metaphor is something practical. We talked about a few verses from the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and overall just felt really good to be here. And it's because of all of you. Thank you very much. We look around, just look at the collective. We're all in different areas at the same time, but we came here with a common interest. Maybe we should, anyway, we'll leave it for now. To be continued. JM, we need a nice way to say goodbye.
Yes.
I'm remembering, well, Denise is reminding me, and so is Megan. I'm trying to remember where it came from. Oh, Himalayas. The yogis who live in caves, they come out every once in a while to get some roots, fruits, and tubers. I don't know what kind of fruits they get in the Himalayas. Probably very bitter berries or something like that. But when they see one another on the high peaks, before they go back into their caves, they have this ritual. They put their arms high in the air and they call out to one another, Hari Bol, keep the transcendental vibration going. Shall we try it? You're already doing it. I'm going to do it too. Hari Bol. Keep the transcendental vibration going. If I had my hat, I'd show you, but KTTVG, that's the main thing. Always keep the transcendental vibration going. See you soon.